Um, Initially, I had tweeted out that I was going to live tweet this, live tweet my thoughts on this, but I accidentally said live stream because I'd been thinking about streaming. And my 10-year-old went ahead and got his first stream in last night. So I figured, why the hell not? And yeah, so got that set up for this morning. And yeah, so basically the backstory here is that Defender of Basic on Twitter set up a prediction market on Manifold Markets about the author of this paper and asked if he was going to drop kind of this groundbreaking theory of reality. And after kind of reading through it, I went ahead and put the money on yes. And so now I'm going to read through this new writing and see how groundbreaking I think it actually is. And I'm going to just kind of do it live because, again, yeah, why the hell not, right? So let's see what we got here. Okay, so we've got how nothing changes into something. That's very much in alignment with what I've been exploring around mimetic economics. How do we get value from nothing? And the answer I've come across is kind of conversation and communication, right? We share information back and forth until it actually turns into something valuable. And so that actually, yeah, that aligns with this first quote here, right? It's an art that demands collaboration. Okay, so we're off to a good start here, honestly, because that was the connection I made before I even started reading. Okay, this article and the next explain how the universe works, including your soul. I mean, that is a big claim. So I respect that. The fact that I came here hoping to see a big claim, and right out of the gate we get a big claim. So that part bodes well. Let's see. Okay, so they explain the operation of the cosmic cycle that shapes the structure and flow of physical reality in enough plain spoken detail for anyone to make sense of it. Okay, so there's really two parts to this, right? There's this concept of a cosmic cycle. Actually, I guess there's three parts. So there's the cosmic cycle, and then the definition of the cosmic cycle. So it shapes the structure and flow of physical reality. But then this is particularly interesting. In enough plain spoken detail for anyone to make sense of it. Okay. I like that. This is one of the things that I've been exploring and finding hard in a lot of ways is communicating complex concepts in ways that other people can grasp. And I've been learning how to do that more and more, but yeah, I definitely appreciate the effort it takes to do anything in plain spoken detail. So that's excellent. If you have a curious mind and for a magical experience, that's awesome. I definitely have a curious mind. That is one of my 3 core values. The other two being kind and being generous. Let's see. That would actually be kind of crazy, wouldn't it? Like, we do kind of just take magnets for granted, but like there's been a lot of engineering to get that out of the earth into something that we can like use. And the first time that somebody saw that, like, probably blew their mind. All right, key questions. Okay, why do we exist? Why does the universe exist? What is reality made of? What is its ultimate substance? Okay, so this is, I don't know, this stands out to me for some reason. And I guess it's like there's 2 questions on the same line. whereas the rest of the questions have a single question. I don't know if that's explicit or not, but it stands out. So, what is thought? What is consciousness? What is time? Okay, this is very much what I've done quite a bit of like thinking and research into. So, I'm excited to see where this goes. Um, okay, science appears to be the best source for getting answers to these questions. I agree with that. What do gods think of science? Okay. First of all, I want to say I really like this approach of taking questions and breaking them down into more questions. Um, that's been one of the most powerful ways I found to actually get to the root of something because you get to like make all of the connections on the way down, and then once you get to the bottom, you start answering them, and they answer. It's kind of this recursive function that kind of answers things on the way back up. And so I think this is actually a really helpful way to do it. Um, I particularly like what do the gods think of science? That's something I've been kind of thinking about in terms of AI and like the power of creation, right? We get to create our own universes in this digital realm. In as simple or as complex terms as we want. Like we actually can create an entire simulation of a universe. Um, and what is math? That is a that's an interesting question too. And then we start going into art. Okay. Um, Scientists don't cite Hamlet, for instance, as an accurate accounting of the operation of revenge, but why not? Um, hmm, that's interesting. Yeah. Um, I don't know that I entirely agree with this statement. Um, and I also don't know that I fully disagree with it. I actually just don't have enough information here. But it feels like there would be a section of like the social sciences that might connect these, or maybe that is more in the humanities. I don't know. Like I'm in such a cross pollinated world. Like I do probably have a wrong inclination as to what the various like segments actually focus on. Because frankly, I don't like looking at the super niche stuff. I'm more interested in the direct application of information to reality now, as opposed to this kind of long drawn out, like maybe someone will read my stuff eventually. Um, and so, yeah, I don't know about this statement. That my initial inclination was like, "Oh, I don't think that's right, but maybe it is. And actually, I think you know I'm more as I talk this out, I'm leaning toward probably agreeing with that statement, and thinking that really like the people looking at Hamlet at all are probably on the humanities side, which I isn't necessarily um, considered science, although I'm probably in an area of thought that is not traditional enough for this to truly be speaking to, which is also interesting because um, this is coming at it from the definition of all these things in terms of like normal definitions and understandings of the words, and that's not necessarily what I'm coming at it with. So that is interesting. And what is art? Do gods care about human art? Mm. So my first thought here, um, and actually, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead. So this makes me think of There's the way I think about this is art holds a mirror up to the gods so that they can admire their own beauty. Um, and so the gods appreciate art. Um, but I think art can also be dangerous to the gods because it can distract the gods while other things are happening behind the scenes. Um, and in this case, I think it's important to define gods, at least in terms of my understanding of it and the way that I'm viewing this question, because this hasn't been defined here. Um, and I think it's important to set up this relationship. But in this case, I view gods, lowercase g, as some sort of power outside of a system that can impact things within the system, while being isolated from the consequence of anything in that system, right? So, in physics, right, there's anything that has like an action has an equal and opposite reaction, right? There's this tying of like causes to results in a way that it enforces consequences. And the gods are outside of the consequences of a given system. And so when you think of it this way, you can actually understand what the gods of a given society are. And the gods are defined by the systems that you're talking about. And so when you're talking about any given system, you can view gods as like, yeah, the ability to influence the system without being directly influenced by the system. Um, but again, directly influence is the key. One of the analogies that I keep coming back to is Medusa and being able to reflect her own power back at her as the solution to the problem, right? The solution is its own problem when you kind of reflect it back. Um, and I think this is what uh, we can do as humans with the systems that we create. We can create systems that mirror the gods back at themselves. And as a startup founder, you can actually model the users of your product as gods in this system, because you've got control over the system and your users are gods and you are trying to please the gods. All right, so now we're talking about startups as religion. Your users are the gods, and I don't think this is where the author intended this paper to go, but I do think it's actually really, really helpful to think about it, because then, do the gods care about human art? In this case, yes, because your users care about things that are not directly money. They care about art. As a business, you're trying to make money, but you need to understand, I think, that the gods do care about human art. All right. I want to get that added to Sublime because that definitely triggered some feelings there, which is very cool. All right. Important and profound questions that will be answered, must be answered in our journey through the cosmic cycle. All right. What is activity? Um, Activity is change. I agree with that. Um, it stems from the idea that actions have reactions. Something in a system causes a change in the system. Um, so anything you can think about, like this is a collection of deltas, and that's I probably need a new collection for that. What do I want to call that? That's in relation to a new data store. All right. Okay, cool. Um, all right. So, all right, I got it wrong. Anyway, okay. So, activity as essence is change. Is that not actually working? Uh, oh, there we go. That's better. Okay, so how can nothing become something? If we maximally dramatic fashion, um, maximally dramatic, or edge cases, which I think is important to look at. So, but I think nothing becoming something is a very, very key aspect. Um, is such an arcane and existential metamorphosis attributable only to the authority of a god? What, other than divinity, could transmute nothing into something? I'm sitting here thinking about the um, idea that our definition of a god as something outside of the system that can impact a system, can transmute nothing into something. And I actually think this perfectly fits because a system that has nothing happening is at equilibrium. Nothing is changing. And so for anything to happen, there has to be something outside of the system to cause a change in the equilibrium. And so basically, you need a god as an agent of chaos that um, creates something just different in the system, right? You have something from outside the system that smacks the system that causes a set of chain reactions that then results in the system being in a different state than it was before the impact of the god outside of the system. Um, okay, I'm really kind of digging this. I really like where this is headed. I see exactly where it's headed. Right, I see where I believe it's headed. I don't know if that's actually exactly where it's headed, but we'll see. A beautiful idea answers these questions. A beautiful game illustrates the beautiful idea. Okay, I like this idea of games too. This is something that I've really tied into. Um, I've been studying a lot of like game theory, and then I've been working on this idea of simulation theory, which basically looks at everything as a um, game based in some subset of reality. Um, and so I do enjoy this. So, what can and does every moment change nothing into something and something into nothing? The cosmic cycle. At the heart of the cosmic cycle is an engine embodying a simple, beautiful idea that unites two forms of activity in a transcendent dance. Physics ensues, purpose pursues. Physics ensues, purpose pursues. The nature of this beautiful idea is succinctly and vividly illustrated by a beautiful game, a thought experiment you can play with in your mind. It's called Maxwell's game. Okay. I've heard of Maxwell's game, and I'll need to dig back into that, and I'll probably okay. Here we go. I'm gonna summarize Maxwell's game. It points us to the crucial dance at the heart of reality and provides an accessible framework for fathoming the mystery of the dance. Okay, physicist James Maxwell discovered the four secret equations of aimlessness which govern the force of electromagnetism. Alrighty. Okay. As I read this, I want to draw some analogies because there are things that are obviously coming to mind with this. Um, so let's look at like tech as hot, like fast moving air molecules, and the rest of the world as like cold, slow moving air molecules. Okay. And we're just going to see if this holds up as we walk through it. So when averaged together, the different speeds of all the air molecules in the box, some slow, some fast, average out to room temperature. This box of ordinary air is the start of Maxwell's game. Okay, now comes the game itself. The game activity. Separate the hot, fast molecules from the cold, slow molecules. After you complete your game of separation, you end up with one box of hot air and one box of cold air, which still average out to room temperature. Except now you can use the box of hot air to roast your turkey. Voila, unlimited energy. Whatever you need to roast a turkey, you don't need to buy propane, charcoal, firewood, or any sort of fuel. Just grab an ordinary box of air, separate out the hot molecules, the game of Maxwell's game, and you've got a new box of fuel ready to broil poultry. Okay, it's a physical activity, separating fast from slow in a mixture of fast and slow. Okay. So this is interesting, right? Because in startups versus non-startups, right? Traditional, boring businesses, sweaty startups. There's basically, I think, physical governed businesses versus information governed businesses, right? Um, those are two different things. One can move very, very quickly because it's not bound by like physical limitations of like being able to build something. And then, kind of the other sort of business, which does like it requires a specific amount of like time, energy, right? Resources, like physical production. Um, and okay, so separating out those two, I can see how this would actually be more difficult than we think. Um, let's see. So the hidden mechanism that explained why the activity of separating molecules of different speeds somehow automatically burned up more energy than you'd get from your new box of fuel. Yeah, that it's interesting. Like to me, that feels like it makes sense, and I don't know that I can explain exactly why. Um, and I'm sure we'll get to that answer here in the end. But that does it feels like the it's the interplay of the fast and slow that creates the stability. Just fast and just slow don't have the same stability, and so you have to introduce an order of chaos that breaks them apart, which consumes more energy than you'd get from just the ones above. The interplay between the hot and cold is creating extra energy on top of just what is present in the hot. I guess that's how I would explain it. Maybe, and maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. That's the intuitive explanation I have for it. Um, okay, so somehow, okay, even there was no apparent reason. After all, it doesn't matter how you dig coal, whether you use a pickaxe or a bulldozer. Almost any method for digging coal is going to net you more energy than the coal you extract. Um, yes, but this is like the reason this is automatically different to me is because like basically there's a set amount of cost, right, to get to like a given depth for coal. You start extracting it out, and then you can kind of compile that coal together and create like this continuous process that uses it. Whereas if you're looking at specifically like this box of air molecules, like um, the equilibrium is more dynamic um, with air molecules than it is like physical, like solid molecules, because it's um, more more dense there, and so um, okay, that again, I think I feel like those are different problems, but that's probably again, like I'm not a pure physicist. I'm trying to apply all of these ideas to real world stuff, and so I'm not as solid on all of the absolute theoretical stuff because I'd much rather care about it in the real world. So, um, yeah. So, physicists are driven by fantasies of a perfect mathematical world of aimlessness, like an enchanted crystal. So they hunt and hunt for physical perfection, whereas it's not at all warranted. Um, just going to add yes to that. Let's throw that in there. Okay. So, right. Physicists typically do hate things that are fuzzy, because if you can't predict it, it doesn't count. So if you can't predict it, the best thing to do is just abstract it away and make a model that doesn't include it. A spherical cow in a vacuum, right? All right. I feel like this is true, um, but I don't know it. That's the thing. Like again, I don't hang around with a bunch of physicists, and so I don't actually know what they hold fast to. But that does feel right, based on kind of my interpretation of physicists, which may or may not be accurate with reality. Um, but I mean, again, yeah. So the first thing they did was reject the role of minds in the game, even though that is the very crux of the thought experiment. Um, okay, that's interesting. They decide to call the mind the demon, Maxwell's demon. Okay, I actually have heard of that now. Like this is all starting to kind of come back to me. Um, and he called it a hypothetical intelligence, which is interesting. Um, I enjoy this. Uh, anyway, okay, so let's see. In terms of aimless physics, we know and understand thermodynamics, information theory, and entropy. Okay. So, if you know where every molecule in the air is located perfectly and precisely, and where it is going perfectly and precisely, then you can calculate at low cost, low energy, exactly what to do to separate out the gas molecules. Just consider the case with two molecules. If you know the fast molecule is moving up and the slow molecule is moving down, you can open the top of box and catch the fast molecule. So this is this is where I think we've broken our understanding of the world. Um, and I think this is exactly what we're getting at here. Um, because the idea here is that like you have a self-contained universe, a system, right? It's this box of air. But then in order to get the information about where all the molecules are located, you're using energy from outside of this system, right? Some sort of being, some demon in this case, um, is saying, okay, there's a box of air and I need to separate it out. And therefore, I need all of this information about the molecules in the air, right? And so there's this abstraction that's outside of the problem definition. And this is really, it feels very tied into Gödel's incompleteness theorem, um, which is something that I build on a lot because it's this idea that like a formal system cannot fully define itself. Like it's this ongoing thing where, um, it's not able to create like the full set of information used to describe itself. And this ties into the stuff I've been doing with like mimetic emergence theory, which basically says you need, um, you know, two formal systems within a third, like incomplete system that is like basically, we can have the two people within a given system, people, intelligences, whatever, right? Um, observe the third system that they share and communicate their observations back and forth to help uh, develop their understanding of reality from perspectives outside of their own. And this is what I get into when I talk about the fact that intelligence is a function of networks, not simply individuals, and why I think that this whole like approach of pouring more and more money into AI is really going to be hitting some very, very like specific limits of what's possible because they're just trying to do something that is not actually possible, and they're getting caught up in this concept of like what is possible with language and what is actually representable in this system. um and so yeah, it is kind of funny that the old school physicists called that a demon. I can actually kind of see how that could be a bit demonic, but yeah, it takes energy to collect information, and this is something we don't value in the economy. All of the information we use in the economy is created by people doing things in the economy, which then gets compressed into uh, money, right? Like that's ultimately what happens. And this is exactly why I keep talking about the fact that people are the most undervalued asset. We're expecting like people more and more to compress more and more information. And this is taking energy that isn't being accounted for in these systems. This leads to complexity inflation, which is what I wrote about the other day, and as part of this research that I'm doing. And so, yeah, I think this is really like starting to tie in well with everything that I've been working as well. And so, yeah, the emergence of one true God. Now that's interesting. Um, I don't know that I agree fully with that statement, but I also could like I'm open to it. I think um I think it probably means actually like what I represent with just other words. Okay, so let's see. Why quantum physics exists. Okay. Thermodynamics, information theory, and entropy. Yes, all of these employ ideal equations. Let's see. Though physicists instinctively try to eliminate the creative intelligence of the demon, the design of the game itself makes no such request. Indeed, the very design of the game, as proposed by Maxwell and self-evident to any mind scientist, invites the contemplation of extremely shrewd and cunning demons with access to vast knowledge. Must imagine Maxwell's game being played by a god, and even a god cannot create unlimited energy if stymied by the uncertainties of quantum physics. But a god is constrained only by classical physics, then it could. The very existence of quantum physics as the backstop for Maxwell's game shows that minds follow different rules than aimless physics. I do agree with that. Okay. Let's see. Two types of physical activity in the universe distinguished by their relation to time. Cosmic cycle in a nutshell. Physics ensues, purpose pursues. Both physics and purpose are dynamics. Types of activities such as growing, shrinking, jumping, falling, flowing, halting, twisting, creating, destroying. Those are all physical activities in the universe. All dynamics, all activity involves change. I agree with this. Something can only be said to be activity if something changes, if something in the universe is different after the activity. Movement, I was standing here, but now I'm here. Growth, seed to flower, transformation, red to green. Electron was spin up and now it is spin down. If we wish to understand the ultimate nature of reality, we must understand change and how it works at its deepest. Paramount is identifying different classes of change, different fundamental classes of activity, and the relevance of any distinctions between activities. Okay. Okay, I'm curious to see which classes of change here we're going to be looking at. So, two types of physical dynamics and the commonality that we can distinguish based on how they embody change. One type of change is aimless. No goal to the change. Aimless change doesn't care if things are up or down. Okay, no choice in aimless activity. Dynamics of aimlessness is physics. Yeah. I mean, this is true, right? Because like there's no story in physics. It's this happens when this happens every single time. There is no unpredictability. Physics is all about predictability, right? So there's no choice. Um, electron and a positron transform into two gamma photons, or two gamma photons may transform into an electron and a positron. Physics does not care which, nor is such transformation predestined. conversion from one to the other, unfolding according to some pre-written timetable. Whether it happens depending on what's happening elsewhere, it can also depend on which direction time is going, and physics doesn't care which way time is going. And right, this is true because like math is a highly compressed representation of the universe that basically like abstracts away the vast majority of it. And so this has helped us save energy because with math we can simulate uh, an entire universe for like very very little. Like think about that. You can have these equations that define what's going to happen like in a universe and you don't need to actually build the universe. Like that's amazing. Like that's incredible information compression. Um and so this is pretty cool. Okay, so no engine that compels time to move in one direction. Right. Time flows in every direction, same impetus, exactly. Okay, the other type of change is directed. Activity directed toward a goal. Common term for goal directed dynamics is purpose. Purpose cares about the outcome of change. Purpose prefers certain types of change over others. This is the story, right? This is the memetics. The what does that change mean in the context of a larger system? Um, One outcome is more valued than the other. Franklin might prefer two gamma photons to an electron and a positron in order to finish his doctoral thesis on high energy optics. Purpose seeks to reshape reality according to the available dynamics of aimlessness to achieve desired outcomes. Physics cares not for time. Whether it's this way or that way makes no difference to physics as long as it's equivalent to what came before according to fixed rules. Minds care ferociously about time for a simple reason. Minds require that time go in one direction and one direction only, forward, toward my great purpose, because purpose can only be directed toward a change in the future. Okay. All right. The equations of physics and purpose are independent except for one common variable. All right. There's all the key equations governing aimlessness and those governing purpose. Physics is encapsulated in the standard model of particle physics and general relativity. Purpose is mostly encapsulated in the mathematics of Stephen Grossberg and Gail Carpenter, but also evolutionary theory and some economics. Okay, let's see. I'll have to dig in there. Like I'm not. Alrighty. Okay. Species both rel and well-studied mathematics of both physics and purpose. We can lay out their equations side to side, independent of one another. Neither aimlessness nor purpose makes reference to the other. This is true. Okay. I mean, I'm saying this is true. I'm I need to see exactly what is being referred to here. But I have enough of an abstraction that I think I see enough of a hole in what's being talked about here that I can fill in what I think this is referencing, um, without being able to specifically state the math being referenced. But that does feel right, and this statement feels right, and so that these are independent of one another, right? Because um, one is about what's happening within a system, and one is what's happening around that system in a larger containing system. And so they are independent of one another, um, except they're not independent of other systems within the larger system. And so like that's where it gets kind of interesting. Um, and I think that's probably where this is headed. Um, right. Free will and dreams and the outrage of the community. Right. No path through the equations of physics that lead you from quarks to barbershop quartets. Only an ocean of aimlessness extending outwards in all directions, like endless drifts of sand. Okay. Um, yeah, yeah, I see that. But the equations for purpose, equations for detecting boundaries, for identifying melodies, for winner take all choice. None of these care about the details of physics either consciousness, imagination, free will. The math governing the dynamics of purpose is independent of substrate. These equations are designed to learn about physics with the expectation that physics may change. Yes, I agree with this. You could create a thinking, feeling mind out of any materials that possess the particular properties of aimlessness required for purpose. For thinking to exist, and language and awareness, and self awareness and passionate romance requires only that there is an accessible pool of randomness that cannot be tainted by other minds, and that this randomness is predictable. Okay, so we can predict that a rolled die will show a single integer between 1 and 6 with equal probability, but in no way of knowing in advance which of the 6 integers will get rolled. If you have a physical substrate that achieves such predictable randomness, you can build a mind out of it. It doesn't matter to purpose whether the mass of an electron is greater than the mass of a proton. But for raw physical matter to take specific concrete form, for matter to become an electron and not a photon, and spin a positron rather than spin down electron, that requires mind, requires a purpose which cares about the outcome. But if the equations of matter and mind are independent, if the equations of matter depend on mass and change momentum, while the equations of mind depend on feedback, attention, and memory, then how do they influence one another? Where do purpose and physics intersect? What common variable conjoins matter and mind in holy matrimony? Time. Time is the only physical variable that matter and mind share in common, and yet they do not share time in common, for physics can move through time in any direction, while purpose can only go forward in time. Oh, okay. So I think I actually jumped ahead when I was thinking about this, right? So I was at the beginning, I was considering other subsystems within a greater containing system that are communicating as what is shared in common. But really, what they do, like, so a components within a system share time. Components outside of a system don't need to. Oh, that's interesting. So the fact that time can be localized, and I think this makes sense because you can take a system and compress time via learning. And this is essentially what we do, right? Um, I can spend a bunch of time learning something and compress that down with language. And you don't need to spend the 4 years that I spent learning something because I can communicate that in language that you can read in an hour or two, right? um, humans have this incredible ability to compress time, um, with our ability to use language to do so. Um, and this is interesting. I'm starting to really like I this is powerful stuff here. Physics is all about equalities. What equals what? Right. So physics, the only thing physics requires of time is that it's connected, right? It's some section of time where everything is connected. But like if things don't have to be connected, that's where the randomness comes in because you can't measure everything all at once. Um yeah, physics doesn't care which. The equations for purpose are different. They do care which. Purpose requires time advancing relentlessly in one direction. Purpose cannot exist without the specific physical phenomenon of an era of time. The equations for perceiving, learning, remembering, planning, navigating, feeling, imagining, and acting all demand that time flow forward only, never in any other direction, even though other directions are permitted by aimlessness. Purpose seeks out particular outcomes, regardless of what is presently perceivable in the environment. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Yes, because panning in the river, you don't see any gold flakes in the pan, but you will keep searching for them until you find them. And so then it's a matter of a time calculation. Is the amount of time it's going to take to find those gold flakes worth the value of the gold flakes? Um, and more, we're able to predict how long things will take, but we're less able to predict the value of the things that we're doing. And so we're focusing really, really hard on protect and predicting the time because that's the only thing that's up being shared by everybody. But we stop trying to predict the value, and so we force things faster and faster without creating more and more value. And I think this again ties into this idea of complexity inflation. Okay, let's see. Until the brown turns to gold, or you give up. Reality has an arrow of time. Admitting that Jesus saves because they have no idea where the arrow of time comes from. I enjoy that. Certainly not in their equations. Entropy driving time. Entropy is a consequence of time flowing into one direction. I agree with that, actually. Where does the arrow actually come from? What do all of us, God and mortal alike, remember the Big Bang and look forward to the heat death of the universe? Okay. Purpose is a game of choice. Yes. Unique dynamics are different from aimless physics. Hazard has a purpose. Condemning is a demon and unscientific. Okay. Same reason Christians had trouble accepting the earth goes around the sun. It's breaking free of social norms. Right. Okay. Need to violate tribal thinking that you never considered tribal, merely thinking. And this is what I've talked about. Intelligence is a function of networks. It's not individual. No matter how much we want it to be individual. Like we but it's also a useful delusion because you're striving to be intelligent, but we don't recognize the fact that like there's more to life than this concept of what we believe is intelligence, which ultimately comes down to prediction. Um, and things are about to get less predictable. And I know that because I'm going to make them less predictable. But that's for a different day here. Okay, so make a decision. Purpose chooses. Okay, that is its unique nature as a dynamic in the commonality. Purpose surveys the environment and declares, I choose to pursue the light. I choose to avoid the darkness. I choose to go in this direction to reach the light. Equations of purpose show how an activity can make a choice in physical reality. Okay. Hollow Archaea, pursuing light over darkness. Provides. Okay. Yeah. Okay, this makes sense, right? All right. So, yeah. So basically, right there's all these chemical reactions that say this is why some sort of creature chooses what it needs, right? There's We're attracted to things. We are pulled in the ways we need to be pulled. Um, because our body is a highly complex system that knows what it needs. And learning to listen to it is one of the hardest and most powerful things I've ever had to do. I'm still very much in the purpose of it, in the process of this, of regaining this connection to my actual like core of my body, because it's something that I lost. I was so focused on trying to learn everything about everything, that I stopped trying to like learn about myself. And um, yeah, like that was kind of a not great state I was in that part of my life. And so getting out of that and starting to learn to listen to, what my body needs, because it knows better than, my brain does. Um, yeah, I think this definitely makes sense. Physics does not move relentlessly forward. True. Um, so how do we turn this into that? How can nothing turn into something? Okay. So two dynamics, the dynamics of aimlessness and the dynamics of purpose. That tracks. The two dynamics intersect and interact. You get Maxwell's game, you get the commonality, you get change. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. You get an arrow of time. Purpose lays claim to physics. Purpose declares, I want the light, so I flip up all the light switches, and behold, there's light I choose. I chose. Physics doesn't care if there's light or darkness. It just says, hey, this will happen if this happens. Okay. Yeah. I just love this sentence. Let's see. There we go. Okay. All right. Foundational truths about aimless physical activity. So it contains a great many predictable equivalences while maintaining a built-in indifference to the equivalences. Okay, yeah, that makes sense, right? The equations are the equations. This is equal to that. Great. So what, right? Like, what's the matter? And you feel a bit like a high school student studying physics. Like, why do we care? And that's it, right? Like, why do we care? Um, and the reason we care, I guess, is purpose, which we're starting to get into here. So this is the dance of reality. See, this is not exactly a symmetrical balance. It's like an ocean of sticky sand that can be reshaped by purpose as it sees fit, chooses the reality it wishes to pursue by drawing upon its memory of the past, and thereby creates an arrow of time, creating a physical structure flowing forward in time. This happened, and so I did this. Yes. Okay. I like this description of it. For other purpose to join in, the new purpose must honor the same arrow of time, the same forward flow of time. Aimlessness begets simple purpose, the simplest. But purpose begets new purpose, which may clash with other purposes and thereby give structure to reality as it flows forward. Yes. So purpose is this idea that, like, there can be a disagreement in the choices, and so we want to get everything on the same arrow of time, but by trying to align the arrows of time, sometimes we end up fracturing arrows of time. Um, and that's actually a good thing. Because what we want to do is we want to basically create all of these mini branching timelines um, that end up being much cheaper computationally than doing things at larger scale. And so you can actually um, run a simulation of a problem at a very small scale and then blow that up uh, to a larger scale via doing it over and over and over again. And this is what machine learning does, right? And so this is how people are executing a machine learning algorithm that is all kind of creating the collective arrow of time of humanity, which is great until the purpose kills the humanity because it focuses on um, too much ego, which is the most dangerous part of all of it, right? The ego is the one is greater than the all, which in some cases is true, but it can also distort things very badly, and so it's a fine line that has to be walked. Um, what stops purpose? Why doesn't purpose take over the universe? Well, it does, right? It does. What stops purpose from converging onto a single, all-knowing, all-powerful God who shapes every fiber of the fabric of reality as it sees fit? Okay. In-text refers to as the fail-safe supreme. We'll get to the next article. Okay, I'm curious about that. I don't that this is the first part that's felt like completely for it. I don't know what this part means at all. Which honestly, this far down, like I'm feeling pretty good about the fact that there's been like one sentence that I didn't understand at all. But it comes with the promise that that'll be talked about later, so I'm okay with that. Most constraint on purpose is other purpose. This is it's at the heart of the American system of government. And right, checks and balances. This is something I've looked at designing into systems, right? Human insurance, this idea that accountability is built in. And this is the constraint on economic purpose. We account for the risks of companies instead of people. So the purpose of companies versus the purpose of individuals. And we really need to start accounting for the purpose of individuals. And this is the clashing and merging that is being referenced here. Purpose creates time. Purpose is the embodiment of time. Purpose creates rich structures in time, largely unknown to most scientists. Damn, I actually like really agree with that, and this is something I've been exploring. And there's the whole thing I'm doing is a speed run. I'm trying to showcase that there are very, very specific signals that could be identified if people knew what they were looking for. But because of the fact that they're not looking at the right level of abstraction, we've created this complexity inflation. We've created this idea that you scale companies by hiring a bunch of people and letting the value grow over time as you create this like hyper learning environment. And it just doesn't align with how people actually like function. And this is what I'm trying to get at, because we're basically trying to align everybody on billionaires' arrows of time while we don't have the resources to dictate our own purpose. And this is something that I've been striving for. This is the heart of the work I'm doing. It's why I can never hold like another job again. I can't let my arrow of time be dictated by someone else. I tried really hard to like help a company align the arrow of time that I saw as where we're headed in the future. And they didn't want to do that, and it's hard because it is different, and we need to think about collaboration. We need to think about creating space in people's lives. We need to think about how we can align everybody's arrow of time to be moving at the same speed with the same level of predictability. And this is what I get at. Like, we need the physics of everybody's money to be the same. And right now, it's not. Money for one set of people is moving very, very fast. And for another set, it's moving very, very slow. And that does not actually capture what the human value creation is, because humans are creating more value more rapidly because of these advances in AI and technology. And so every single individual person is becoming more valuable on their own than they are as part of these large, complex systems that are not doing anything of actual value. And it's what I'm going to point out and systematically destroy, because they are actively damaging the information landscape of the world. And we really need to understand how to use market forces effectively to minimize information asymmetries. Because what we want to get to is, I guess, I don't want to say it like this, but we need to kind of build the one true God being referred to here that aligns everybody on the arrow of time. Because one person's time is not more valuable than someone else's time. The ultimate value of time is like coordination, and we need to let people trust their bodies and what they can actually do, because we're not respecting human limitations, and we're building these systems that burn people out and then like spit them out and replace them with the next cog in the machine. And I say this as somebody who was that cog in the machine. All I wanted to do was learn and get better, and I learned and learned, and I learned faster and faster, trying to get ahead in the economy, only to realize that like I can't. And yeah, and that's the choice. Like, once you see that choice, you can't make a different one. And that's, I want to give people more choices. And so in terms of whether or not this article dropped a new understanding of reality, that I forget the exact copy that was used on Manifold. Maybe we can actually look that up here. Let's see. Okay. So I voted as yes on this. And I agree with it. Like, I mean, genuinely novel, I guess, is hard. But I think I'm curious to see how everybody else responds. But this actually fully aligns with what I've been working on, and I think there is something very, very deep here that people may or not recognize. And so I don't. Let's see. Was there? So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I guess we'll see how it resolves with the other participants. But if I were you, I would definitely spend some time understanding this. I think there's some very, very deep truths here that once you understand them, you'll be much better situated to do well in a rapidly changing world. And I think we're going to see something very interesting come out of this, one way or the other. So I don't know if this will actually resolve to yes, but I'm confident in my bet on yes, whether or not it resolves to yes, and I'm making the choice to stand by my bet, and saying it is the most valuable one, regardless of whether or not. Um, yeah, it comes down to it. And wow, this has been over an hour. I honestly had no idea how long I'd been doing this. Just been talking out loud. Haven't actually even seen if. Oh, looks like I have one person watching. So awesome. Hello over on Twitch. And yeah, so I think I'm going to end it here. Gonna go yeah, just take a little bit of a break, let my brain relax. And yeah, I'll post the recording up. And then also I've got some notes running in the background that transcribe it and do all that. So I'll throw that out in a blog post as well. But yeah, honestly, this was a fun first stream, and hope anyone who got a chance to watch part of it enjoyed it. And until next time, see you later.